Welcome back, this is Goku Sun DBZ of course, and welcome back for a new sales history list. This time we're looking at one of my top two favorite horror franchises of all time, and that is the Silent Hill series. So with that said, let's get started on the sales history of the Silent Hill franchise. Hopefully you enjoy some of the music in the background, hopefully Konami doesn't try crap. So, with that said, first up, we go back in time to the very first game in the series. The original Silent Hill, released, of course, exclusively to the original PlayStation. It was released in 1999, 21 years ago. It was released and has a critic score of an 8.9 out of 10, which is a really good score. It ended up selling around an estimated 1.6 million copies. And of course, the Silent Hill 1 is a true classic among survival horror games. It's one of the greats. It's one of, in my opinion, top 5 best survival horror games on the original PlayStation, without a doubt. Maybe my number 2 favorite survival horror game on the PS1, only behind Resident Evil 2. With that said, next up we have Silent Hill 2, which is the most beloved among critics, and for the most part, it is pretty much my favorite of the Silent Hill series as well. It is definitely a good game. It was released both on the PS2 and the original Xbox. Though the original Xbox has more content DLC because the improved version was never released on PS2s here in the West, strictly in Japan only. So if you want the version with all the content, you have to go with original Xbox. But Silent Hill 2 was released, as I said, original Xbox and PS2 was released in 2001. It released to a critic score of a 9 out of 10. Though I feel it should have been at least a 9.5 out of 10, if not a 10 out of 10, but whatever. 9 out of 10 still isn't bad. Today, the game is looked back very fondly, as many of the classic Team Silent Hill games were. It sold, actually, a little less, at least that I could find. Sales numbers showed it sold around 1,560,000 copies. So just shy of the original Silent Hill, but still, it sold pretty solid for a horror game. Next, coming in, we have Silent Hill 3, which was actually a sequel to, of course, the original Silent Hill, where you played with the little girl from the original grown up to a young adult. And now, this one was released on the PS2 as well as the original Xbox. It was released in 2003 with a critic score of 8.4 out of 10, which is actually still a very solid critic score. It sold around an estimated 1,200,000 or 1.2 million. So once again, we see a little drop in sales, but still, it had pretty solid sales overall, with at least over a million copies sold. It's too bad it didn't do better, because there's actually a lot of extra content in Silent Hill 3. I think it's actually a better game than some people give it credit for, but I still don't consider it the most underrated game of the franchise. And that remains to be. Uh, Coming in next, we have Silent Hill 4 The Room, which would be the last more traditional Team Silent game. Now, I'll be honest, this is one of my personal favorite Silent Hill games. I think it's criminally underrated in my opinion, and it deserves a lot more respect than it gets. I personally have always loved Silent Hill for the Room, and as time has gone on, I've liked the game even more. I like the unique feel and the very uniqueness of Silent Hill for the Room gives it its own standalone feel and look. There's no way you can mistake the fourth Silent Hill for any other in the series, because it is that unique and definitive of a game. And I just liked how the mechanics and the uniqueness of the game is why I really enjoyed it, and it's in my top 3 favorite Silent Hill games. It released with actually a critical score of an 8.1, so not too bad overall still. It was released in 2004. It unfortunately would see a big drop in sales numbers. It was released on the PS2 and the original Xbox, of course. It sold an estimated 690,000 copies, so very solid overall. Next, we have another one, a game I feel deserves a little more respect than it gets, because it's still a very solid Silent Hill game, in my opinion. Next, we have released in 2006. It was released and has 2 separate scores among critics. Both the same score, though. It was released on the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation Portable. And that being a special, or rather prequel, or origin story, if you will. That being Silent Hill Origins, which is in my top 5 favorite Silent Hill games. I love this game. I'd probably rank it my number 5 favorite Silent Hill. Silent Hill 3 The Room, or 4 The Room is probably my 3rd favorite Silent Hill game. But with that said, yeah, it's unfortunate it sold only 690,000. Actually, Origins sold 590,000 copies, so it dropped another 100,000 from The Room, which is unfortunate because the game deserves more respect than it gets. It got a critic score, though, of a 7.8, which is a huge drop, and I actually feel the game deserves more respect than it gets. Next, we have released in 2008 for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. The 360 version got a 7.6, and the PS3 version got a 7.4. And that being Silent Hill Homecoming, which actually sold better than Origins and Silent Hill 4 The Room, interestingly enough. Silent Hill Homecomings ended up selling around an estimated 840,000 copies. So it sold very solid overall in sales. It did good, and it looked like maybe Silent Hill would start going back up again in sales and everything. Silent Hill Homecoming is not a bad game by any means. It's not one of my personal favorites in the series. It's actually a pretty solid overall Silent Hill game, I'll be honest. And I would put it, though, somewhere in the middle of the franchise for me personally. But still, it's not a bad game at all. Coming next, we have released in 2009, 1 year later. It would be released on 3 platforms. 2 out of the 3 would be ridiculously, now today, way overpriced. That being Silent Hill Shattered Memories, which is a very divisive game in the series. For many people, it's pretty much either you really enjoyed it or you hate it. There's not really too much middle ground on Shattered Memories. Personally, I'm one of those people who actually doesn't mind the game for the most part. But unfortunately, I remember playing it years ago on the PS2, which today is easily the most expensive version of the game, unfortunately, which sucks. So I have the cheaper version I got earlier this year, and that being the Wii version. But Silent Hill Shattered Memories was released on the PSP, the PS2, and the Nintendo Wii. Released, as I said, in 2009. Critic scores, PSP got a 7.8, the Wii got a 7.3, and the PS2 got the best score of an 8 out of 10. In my opinion, as I said, knowing from what I experienced with the PS2 version, I think it's a really good game. Though I am kind of curious how the motion controls work with the game with the Wii version. Eventually, I may get around playing the Wii port and maybe give an actual game review on it as well. It sold actually really good. Of course, it was on 3 platforms, but it sold 1,370,000 copies. It sold very good. I mean, selling almost 1.4 million. This was the best-selling Silent Hill game since Silent Hill 2. To put in perspective in sales numbers, Shattered Memories, even though it's a very divisive game, it remains the third best-selling game of the Silent Hill franchise. Next, we have released in 2012 my fourth favorite Silent Hill game, and I think is one of the two most underrated games in the series. In my opinion, Silent Hill 4 The Room and this game are the two most underrated in the Silent Hill series. And that is Silent Hill Downpour. As I said, released in 2012. It was released on the PS3 and the 360. I have it on the PS3. Personally, I think the game is great, but because of it being criminally underrated, you can get the game still super cheap today. I got it factory still brand new for like $12. You can easily find the game for $20 or less brand new. So if you get a chance to pick up Downpour, get it. I highly recommend it. It is the only Silent Hill game of its kind. It's an open world Silent Hill game. It is very different than other Silent Hill games of the past, but it is still an incredible game, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Please pick up Downpour. It's great. I love the side quests and everything you do in the game. It's very unique and different from any other Silent Hill game, but I feel the game deserves a lot more respect than it gets. Downpour got a 7.5 critic score on the PS3, got a 7.2 on the 360. I personally would probably give the game more of like an 8.5 out of 10, personally, to maybe close to, well, I'd say an 8.5 to an 8.7 for me. But Downpour sold 790,000 copies, which is actually not that bad at all in sales. It outsold other games in the series. I mean, it did better than Silent Hill 4 The Room, it did better than Origins, which is surprising. Though the great game, as I said, is great and you can get it dirt cheap. So pick it up while it's good in price, because older Silent Hill games are going up. Next, we have a very unique game which has no critic score. It was also released in 2012. It was released exclusively on the PlayStation Vita, which actually I have. And strangely enough, it's a very unique game. As I tell people, it's a dungeon crawler. As a dungeon crawler, it is a solid, really good game to play on mobile, on a handheld. It's just not a great Silent Hill game overall in perspective. But still, Silent Hill Book of Memories sold around 230,000 copies, which I'm actually surprised it sold that good. Though, as I said, as a dungeon crawler, and I occasionally like to play dungeon crawlers, it's easily one of the best dungeon crawler experiences you can play on the Vita. Easily. I highly recommend it if you have a Vita. This is definitely a game I would consider a must-buy if you like dungeon crawlers. If you're like an old school Silent Hill fan, you're probably not going to like this, or unless you're like me and you're open-minded to playing every Silent Hill game. And last but not least, we look at the controversial Silent Hill HD collection, also released in 2012. With a critic score on the PS3 version of a 4.5. That's bad. And the 360 version would get a 7.2 because they would end up doing a lot of patch updates to fix glitch issues and stuff in the 360 version, but those patches were never released for the PS3 version for some bizarro reason. Eventually, I may try to pick up the 360 version, as long as I can still get the patch updates and stuff to fix the glitch issues. But this game, of course, was released on the 360 and PS3, as I mentioned, and it sold, though, Surprisingly, 510,000 copies, sold over 500,000. So that's impressive. Only a select few HD collections actually sell really good, and this is one of the better selling HD collections, surprisingly, though, with the controversy involved in it. But with that said, this was the sales history of the Silent Hill series, and I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel, and stay safe out there, everyone, in this bonkers age we live in now. But I'm quickly announcing next month in October, I am going to be doing 2 horror movie reviews. I thought I'd mention at the end of this being a horror themed video. I will be reviewing the first Silent Hill movie. I thought it would go along with this list. But yeah, I will be reviewing next month for Halloween month the original Silent Hill film. I am also going to be reviewing another video game live action adaptation next month as well, the original Resident Evil live action film. So stay tuned for that next month, and I'll see y'all again soon enough.